Welcome to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called Dress Code Compliance. The organization I work for was acquired by a larger company fairly recently. Alongside the new CEO, we gained a whole new management team, as those previously in the roles were forced out the door. The old team was fairly lax, as long as productivity was good and we were meeting our project targets. The new team was the exact opposite. We were now met with micromanaging, nitpicking and just general pettiness. Many people quit, and most who stayed were actively seeking new employment, literally taking job interviews over lunch. This brings us to the malicious compliance. We were made to attend what was essentially a glorified employee orientation session to learn about how things would be under new management, and also to be lectured about the ways in which we hadn't been adhering to policy thus far. None of the policies really changed significantly, but management's willingness to enforce these policies had apparently increased tenfold. The employee dress code came up. They mentioned it would be enforced, as they could tell it had not been before. It was fairly standard, but people were annoyed since it seemed needlessly petty and we already felt an insane amount of vitriol towards the new management team. One highlight of the employee dress code included the provision that acceptable bottoms were limited to skirts, leggings and dress slacks, with jeans being permissible on casual Friday. One of my male co-workers attempted to argue that it wasn't fair that women could wear skirts or pajamas, but men were limited to dress slacks. It was a double standard that men could not be comfortable. It was ineffective. So naturally, that Friday, dozens of men arrived to work in leggings. An amazingly coordinated feat of malicious compliance. The next story is called Mandatory Meeting. This story comes from the world of education, where teachers are burnt out, overworked and underpaid. Due to an influx in federal funding, due to stimulus money, our district decided to put that money to good use. Did they give much needed raises? Hire more aides? Update our 60-year-old building? No, even better. They hired several educational consultants to coach us on how to do our jobs. This alone was very insulting to most teachers, many of whom had been teaching longer than some of the consultants had been alive. Thankfully, many of the new consultants didn't really impact our day-to-day work, but there's one who is particularly difficult. I call her the Panther. The Panther continually adds to our workload, insults teachers with snide remarks and talks down to the staff. At one point it got so unbearable that the most experienced teacher in our department simply got up from a meeting, told the principal to get us up and drove away. One of the biggest issues has been a sharp spike in unneeded meetings as consultants work to justify their contracts. We meet to discuss data, testing, plan units or do everyone's favorite, team building activities. However, all is finally looking up, as every teacher knows we are nearing the most wonderful time of year, Christmas break. We will get 2 glorious weeks of not being harassed by students or administrators. Enter the Panther. We received an email at the end of last week from our consultant telling us we needed to have a meeting over Christmas break to plan Unit 4. She told us we could pick the day and time and then sent her the Zoom link and she would join to lead it. Needless to say, the department was very unhappy. We had all already planned the unit anyway, but the Panther said she needed to be involved in any planning and insisted the meeting was necessary. Finally, my department head had had enough. She planned the meeting as instructed and sent us all the link for the Zoom session. The meeting was planned for 11 PM on December 24th. We all instantly accepted the meeting time and confirmed that we would attend. For some reason the Panther wasn't happy with the meeting time. She pushed back, grabbed to an assistant principal who backed us and tried to get us to change, but she got the same answer everywhere. You told them to schedule a meeting, so either attend or cancel. She cancelled. The third story is called Bean Counter Compliance. For my old job, I was a forklift mechanic. I started off in our shop. Bad driving record kept me from starting in a service van. I had been looking to buy a house, and once my boss got wind of it, he said, "Hey, you should move out west so we have a van out there." We had several large customers 2 to 3 hours from our shop that were being serviced by techs that would drive out and back each day. So I obliged, bought a house right in the middle of them all, getting a company van. I was saving them lots of money paying tax to drive each way, while also getting to move out of the city and live in the sticks. We had tax scattered throughout the several hundred square mile territories of our branch. The original travel policy was set up so we gave up a half hour to the first customer and the last half hour of the day as well. Normally we'd all try to start and end close to our house so it wasn't a big deal, and occasionally take a longer trip if need be for the whole day. One of our biggest customers was an hour's drive each way, so I'd spend 12 hours there. Including unpaid lunch, travel to and from the customer, I'd get paid for 13 hours while being gone for 15.5 hours. Getting 12 hours of on-site work before the move, our company would pay someone 2.5 hours each way and put an extra 140 miles on their service van to do so. Having tax spread out was efficient. They would occasionally send someone out with parts restock and to help knock out some work while they were here. They'd drive straight out and work the whole day, then drive back home at night. Well, some bean counter decided they were paying too much money for commute time. They changed it to 45 minutes given up in the morning and 0 pay in the afternoon. For most techs it didn't change much, but for the handful of us that were the most remote, it meant we'd lose 5 to 10 hours of pay each week. It caused an outrage, but of course the company said, too bad. So here's where we started complying. I had a customer that was 15 minutes away to the north. They had a lot of trucks that required monthly service for whatever dumb reason they decided to pick that interval. Most of them were backup units that only moved if they were on the way or when I serviced them. So I'd start my day there and do the 45-minute check on a truck that was in the same spot it was last time I checked it. Then drove back past my house to the customer, on the clock, wasting a solid half hour of the day driving extra and then repeat in the afternoon. We all did this and our efficiency dropped. Now, instead of changing the rule to not suck, they started writing us up. Eventually, we all started quitting. I pursued my side hobby and turned it into a business. Ended up renting a shop next to the biggest customer we had out here and got to see 2 vans parked there almost every day from the main branch. I loved knowing how much they were wasting, sending them both out almost daily. Several of my old customers would see me around town and say, "Man, I wish you hadn't quit, we are switching companies now, cause the new tech sucks. Good job, bean counters." The last story is called Sign the Lease. About 10 years ago, I rented a room in a student apartment along with my then best friend. He was the first to sign on, so got the biggest room. The second was already claimed by a stranger. So I was stuck with a tiny shoebox adjacent to my best friend's room, but also adjacent to the living room where the one and only internet cable jack was. A bargain was struck where my AV equipment would sit in the living room and anyone could use it, so long as they signed off when I got home and let me use my stuff. I couldn't fit a TV in my little shoebox. During the walkthrough, the superintendent noted that the previous tenants had punched a hole in the far corners of my walls about the size of a pop can to run Ethernet cables through the wall. I didn't care, and my friend and I agreed to leave it as is, so we both had wired internet and would run wires from the jack in the main room rather than working wirelessly. Another thing I noted was that the door handles to the rooms were on the wrong way. The tongue of the latch had the curved side facing out into the hall, making it really easy to break into with a credit card. Please note, I took pictures of the holes, doorknob and the room as soon as I saw it. I may have been a renting noob, but I knew at least a little. So I signed my 12-month lease and accordingly paid my first and last month's rent as the security deposit. It was $400 a month for this little shoebox, but it was freedom. Everything was okay for the first 4 months, aside from learning my friend was a slob and I'd be doing most of the cleaning, but I dealt with it. Unfortunately, my friend eventually also got a girlfriend, and I'm sure you see where this is going. She moved in without actually moving in and things went bad fast. The rotating tenant had also gotten caught doing some illegal crap. And lastly, my contract had ended, putting me out of a job. There were other prospects though, and I wasn't quite ready to ask my parents if I could move back in for a bit. The landlord knew the rotating tenant had broken the law a couple of times in the apartment. We'd complained, and they had done fat diddly squat about it, despite actually having the legal right to evict this guy. We were expecting he'd leave at the end of the year anyway, as he was a student, so we didn't push too hard. But they knew what they had, and so long as he paid rent, they didn't care what laws he broke in the building. Now, where's the malicious compliance, I hear you ask? Well, in Ontario, a residential tenancy automatically renews on a month-to-month basis after the defined period, in my case a year, ends, unless either the landlord or tenant gives a notice of termination. A tenant must provide 60 days notice of intent to leave, and the landlord can kick you out only if you've violated specific guidelines, which I had not. Always paid on time, no complaints, and I'd caused no damage to my room they were aware of. I had put up some pictures, but they'd not been by once to inspect in the time I'd been there. Anyhow, instead of receiving a notice of termination, I received a demand about 70 days from the end of my lease from my landlord to sign a new year-long lease starting at the end of my current period. When I told them I'd intended to continue month to month, as I may still be able to find a job and needed that extra flexibility, they told me I couldn't. I needed to sign a new contract or they would evict me. I asked what grounds they thought they had to evict me, and they just repeated the threat: sign or get kicked out. This went round and round for a few days, getting nowhere, until the girlfriend left the door unlocked to the apartment for the 100th time. I came home to find two tweaked out strangers that no one knew sitting on the couch playing on my consoles, and I decided I needed out. So I said okay, I'm leaving at the end of my lease, within the 60 days warning period. Since they demanded first and last month's rent as the security deposit, I indicated that they wouldn't be receiving a rent payment for the final month. They complained a bit, claiming I needed to pay an extra month because there needed to be a security deposit. I just reminded them I could always stay on month to month, which they again refused. Aside from the fact that them trying to force me into a lease is illegal, I wasn't paying that last month's rent because I saw something coming a mile away. Within a week, my family helped me move back home, and the apartment sat empty for 2 weeks until the final month of my lease started. I also took a picture of the room when I left, and wouldn't you know it, electronically it's a match. You can't see the pinholes from my pictures, but that's fine. I didn't return the key immediately because I wanted to patch the pinholes from my wall hangings before handing it in, as I wanted no other trouble. Well, the day I came back to this, I found out that the rotating tenant had broken into my room and dumped all his crap in there and was using the room for storage. It caused a load of damage to the door frame breaking in and cut deep gouges in the drywall by pushing a spare metal bed frame along one wall. It frankly looked like a crack house. Oh no, the criminal we'd warned them about and who had access to an easily broken into room had broken into this room and trashed it. Whoever could have seen this coming? I brought the super upstairs, showed her what he'd done, and told her in no uncertain terms that I wasn't cleaning his crap out of my room and handed over the key. If they had any issue with the state of the room, they were to harass him, not me. And yes, I do realize as an adult I could have charged him for breaking and entering, but this whole experience had soured so badly I was just ready to be done. About a week later, I get an email from the apartment owner sending me a bill for damages. They wanted a flat $500 to repaint and, get this, patch the damage done by the guy who broke into my room, as well as the holes in the walls the previous tenants had left, trying to blame all of it on me. Needless to say, I was livid and emailed them back that the superintendent was well aware of the holes the previous tenants left, and that the damage to the room they were noting currently was due to the break-in, not any action of my own. They responded they didn't care. And get this, if I didn't want to be on the hook for the holes for the Ethernet cable, I should have taken pictures when I first moved in. Cue me sending them the pictures of the holes that I took before moving in. And the backward door latch, with a heads up that the rotating tenant would never have been able to break into my room as easily as he did if they would have put the doorknob on the right way. They also got the before and after pics of the room. I also quoted the specific passages that indicated that I had offered to go to month leasing rather than leaving now, and that if they hadn't tried to push me into a lease, I'd still be there, and the damage would have never happened, as the rotating tenant left at the end of this period anyway. I also told them that even if I had been responsible for the damage, I wouldn't have paid anything, unless they could provide receipts indicating the repairs actually cost $500, and that if they really thought they had a case against me, they could serve me. And that I was well prepared to provide the judge every instant I logged over the year of them violating tenant law, starting with trying to bully me into signing a lease. Never heard anything back. And with that, we end today's video. Let me know what you think about the stories. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the stories and today's video? I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. And I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.